Creative use. So just a brief description of creative use is that these are using REDCap features where they were not designed for that, but you could use these features to help make your participants or researchers experience a little bit better. For example, there's been cases where you want to password lock your public survey. So these are where you often see posters and there's a one link that everyone are interested would click on that link and complete the survey. However, you want to password lock. Sometimes there's a requirement you want to password lock it so that not just anyone that have access to the link can just enter. Well, there isn't a feature specific for that. So what you could do instead is use the survey queue, which I talked about earlier. And that's just where the flow is. So where you basically create two surveys. There's a welcome login, so a landing page. So that could include like a brief description of a research project, for example. And the actual survey is actually the second survey and is password locked by saying there's a password field. And this so happens the password is password. It's not actually it's the worst password it could be, but that's the current that's the example. You can set it to any password you want, and then using the survey login feature that I also talked about earlier, you can say, well, any participant that wants to enter this survey would then need to enter the password before they can continue and complete the survey. And just to make it even more of a password experience, have a more experience like a login, is that you can make that field password mask because they're entering that field and it's password mask, and that way whatever they're entering is not visible when they're entering it. So that's one example. Another example is help text for matrix questions. So sometimes you will want to have a little bit of prompts, like to help them along. So like what you want to kind of better explain what the question is asking. By default, that's not possible with matrix fields. For example, in this question, you have two questions in this matrix for skiing. Well, typically you will want to use it in your label, but for example's sake, you want to better explain which type of skiing you're referring to for the first one and the second one. To do this, you use you can use the data dictionary. So I touched on it you can quickly create repetitive type of questions like Likert scale type questions. You can also use data dictionary because within REDCap it's called field notes. So that's the help text. You can put it in the data dictionary. When you upload it, it actually appears here, even though you can't do it from the interface. So that's a tip. If you want to help text, you can use data dictionary to slip it in. Next, conditional piping. So and thank you for the question earlier. I didn't touch on piping in my original presentation slides, but piping is where you can bring data that was entered previously in previous forms into a subsequent form. So in the previous example, it was bringing in the study ID into another form. However, this is a creative use of using the piping mechanism for conditionally. So the problem is you have a survey that depending on who is filling out the survey, you may want to phrase a question slightly different. For example, for this example, it's like if the parent is asking, if the parent's filling it out, it will ask your child's age rather than your age. If the child is filling it out, it should be your age. Now, you probably don't want to have two questions asking the same thing and using branching logic to display one or the other, otherwise, because that will create two columns in your data. So to work around that, what you could do is create a survey with multiple pages. And the first page, one of the questions will ask, who is filling this out? Is it the parent? Is it the child? And I'll show you an example here. This is just a textual description of how it works. And then you have a hidden question that basically has the option your and your child's available, and it's defaulted to depending on who is responding to the survey. So if they selected parents, then the option your child's will be by default selected, and vice versa. If it's a child that's filling it out, the option your will be selected. And I suggest using the @hidden survey. That way, this intermediate field that's not really for data collection, it's just for facilitating the conditional piping, not to be visible to the participant in the survey form. You can use @hidden survey action tag to hide it. And then you pipe the word your or your child into the question. So here's the example. Who is completing the survey? You have a parent and your child. And then you have another question which has your child and your option. And something I want to point out is that these are the section headers. So these are telling the REDCap where the page breaks are. So in the survey settings, you can set for multiple pages, and to let REDCap know where you want to break the form into multiple pages is with these section headers. Text is optional, so you could have section header that has no text or have text. So this is just another data dictionary format just to clearly see. So it defaults to the, for example, if parent is selected, it will choose your child's. If child is selected, the word your will be selected. And here you see here the piping is also being used. The variable who to, which has the value your child or your, is piped into this question label. What is blank age? So what is your child's age, or what is your age? And I want to re-emphasize, this only works if the survey is in multiple pages, because the response from the first question has to be saved before it can be used for the subsequent two questions. So that's why there's a page break, section break between the first question and the second question. So here's sort of a live version of that. Who is completing the survey? So that's page 1. And then on page 2, you'll have what is your child's age? And then as you can see, the question for that your child is not shown. It's because I've hidden it from the survey view. And I've used this, the piping twice. Lastly, I have rotate matrix headers. So matrix headers by default are horizontal. Just like any question label, they're horizontal. Now, if you have more and more options, or if because your original form has it tilted and you want it to be as close to the original survey as possible, what you could do is use HTML. So I have it here as an example, and you can copy and paste later for your purposes. Embedded in here, you see the option like very much. And you can play around with the numbers here, the negative 90 degrees here, just as how much it rotates. And then what it does is, for my example, I rotated 90 degrees, so totally vertical. You may want to slant it, so you may want to play with the negative 90, so that'll be more like 45 degrees.